Thank you, McAllen. Well, thank you all very much for being out here tonight. This is quite the crowd. And let me thank our musicians. Let me thank Veronica Guerrero, a great public school teacher. Sareth Garcia, who talked about what Medicaid means to her life. Leonard Aguilar, who understands we've got to build the trade union movement in this country. Kendall Scudder, who understands that for many years the Democratic Party in Texas has been run in a terrible way. It's got to be turned around, and he intends to do that. And lastly, let me thank my friend Greg Casar from Austin. Texas, you have given us one of the outstanding members of the U.S. Congress, and we appreciate that very much. This is a tough time for America, and it's a tough time for McAllen. And I'm not going to deny that for a second. And I hope tonight that we're going to have a serious discussion about what's going on in our country and what's going on right here. There's a lot of bad news, clearly, in the fact that we have, as a nation today, more serious crises than we have ever had in the modern history of America. And if you're feeling a little bit overwhelmed, you're not alone. That's a feeling that is being experienced all over America. That's the bad news, but I'll tell you the good news, and that is in our Fighting Oligarchy tour that Greg has been a part of, and we've gone to, this is our 13th state, more than 250,000 people have come out. And just last Saturday, on the No Kings Day, millions and millions of Americans in every state of this country came out and loudly and clearly, they said no to oligarchy, no to authoritarianism and picking people up off of the streets. No to kleptocracy and a president who's going to make billions of dollars off of his presidency. And no to legislation which will provide, if passed, hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to the top 1% and make devastating cuts to the needs of working families. So that's what's going on in the country. And let me be more specific. You are now living in an oligarchic form of society. Some of you may have noticed when Trump was inaugurated, seems like 20 years ago, but it was just a few months ago, standing right behind him were the three wealthiest people in America, Mr. Musk, Mr. Bezos, Mr. Zuckerberg. You know those guys. And then seated right behind them were another 13 billionaires who Trump had nominated to head various major government agencies. So I don't have to tell you or the American people that today we have a government of the billionaires, by the billionaires, and for the billionaires. I don't have to tell you because Mr. Trump did already. Today in America, we have more income and wealth inequality than we have ever had in the history of the United States of America. Now, what I'm going to tell you doesn't get on TV too much and certainly not discussed in the halls or the floors of Congress. You got one man, our friend Mr. Musk, who owns more wealth than the bottom 52% of households in America. You hear that? One person owning more wealth than over half the households in America. You got in America today, top 1% owning more wealth than the bottom 93% of Americans. You got CEOs in America now making 350 times what their average employees make. So bottom line, you got the people on top. Never in the history of this country have done better than they're doing it today. And it's not just income and wealth inequality. You got more concentration of ownership in America, in every sector of our society, whether it's agriculture or transportation or financial services. You got a few giant multinational corporations who control what is produced and, more importantly, the high prices for the products that you pay. Bottom line is that in the wealthiest country in America, and in the history of the world, we have two Americas. One America, people on top, doing phenomenally well. But there is another America that I suspect the people in McAllen are very familiar with. And that is that while the 1% is doing extraordinarily well, there are millions and millions of families in Vermont and here in Texas who are struggling to pay the rent, struggling to pay for health care, struggling to put food on the table, to pay for child care and other basic necessities of life. And again, I hope you hear this because you're not going to see it on TV very often. Today in America, 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. You all know what living paycheck to paycheck is about? Yeah, I'm afraid many of you do. I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck. And what that means is you got people, mom, dad, working hard, sometimes 50, 60 hours a week, just trying desperately to bring in enough money to keep the family going. And people are worried. What happens if the rent goes up? What happens if the car breaks down? What happens if mother gets sick? And suddenly the whole thing could unravel because people have literally no money in the bank. They're living paycheck to paycheck. And I'll tell you something else about paycheck. I want to ask you, and later on I'm going to ask you, I want you to talk about what it means to live paycheck to paycheck. But here's something else that we don't talk about very much in America. As a nation, despite the huge amount of money we spend on health care, we live on average about 4 years shorter lives than people in other wealthy countries. Got it? That's bad. You know what's even worse? In America today, if you are working class, on average, you will live 7 years shorter life than the 1%. All right, somebody help me out on this one. Why is that? Why do working class people live shorter lives than people who have a lot of money? All right. Somebody raise their hand here. Yes, sir. Overwork, underpaid. And what does that contribute to? All right. The key word here is stress. Yes, ma'am, do you want to jump in? Food desert, not having access to decent food. What else you got? Yes, ma'am. Poor access to health care. Boy, you guys hit the nail right on the head. All right, inadequate wages, no vacations, people are overworked, not able to retire. All right, you add all of that stuff up, and what doctors will tell you, nobody debates this, is that when people every day are worried about how they survive, what the stress does is really have a negative impact on their bodies, on their cardiovascular system, and on their minds, mental stress. That is the simple reality. And you add all of that stuff up, that is why working class people die 7 years earlier than the wealthy. Well, that's another issue we'll get to in a minute. And people in this country today are very angry. They're angry for a lot of reasons, and sometimes they get angry at the wrong people for the wrong reasons. And I want to get into that in a moment with your help. But what I want to say right now, when you talk about why people are angry, what is not widely known, and I want you to hear this one carefully, as all of you can imagine, over the last 50 years, there has been an explosion in technology and an increase in worker productivity, right? It means that every worker here is producing a lot more than somebody in that position did 50 years ago. And yet, despite that huge increase in worker productivity, the truth of the matter is that inflation accounted for wages, weekly wages, are lower today than they were 52 years ago. Do you understand what I'm saying? So you got this huge increase in productivity. Where is all of that increased wealth going? And the answer is that over the last 50 years, there has been a $75 trillion transfer of wealth from the bottom 90% to the top 1%. And in the midst of all of that, stagnant wages, people not being able to keep up with inflation, cost of childcare exploding, groceries exploding, that in the midst of all of that, right now, literally today, I'll be back in Washington on Monday. We'll be dealing with this. Trump has brought forward with the Republican leadership a reconciliation bill, or what he calls his big, beautiful bill. And at a time of massive income and wealth inequality, this bill would provide $650 billion in tax breaks to the top 1%. It would provide more than $400 billion to large corporations who will use those tax breaks to bring in robotics and artificial intelligence, which will throw workers in this country out on the street. And the Republicans are paying for these huge tax breaks in an incredibly insidious and immoral way. Everybody here knows that our healthcare system today is broken, right? We got 85 million Americans who are uninsured or underinsured. What these guys want to do is cut Medicaid by some $700 billion and throw 16 million more Americans off of the health care they have. And it's not just individuals who would be impacted. Nursing homes, who are already struggling, receive 2/3 of their funding from Medicaid, and these nursing homes would either have to shut down or lower their quality of care. It would be, these cuts to Medicaid would be devastating for community health centers, and I fought very hard over the years to build community health centers all over America, including Texas, so people, regardless of income, could walk in and get the health care they need. This bill cuts in Medicaid, devastating not only community health centers, but the hospitals, to the entire healthcare system. And here's something that is really unbelievable and shocking. There was a study done recently by the Yale School of Public Health and the University of Pennsylvania. And they estimated that when you throw 16 million people off of the health care that they have, people who are working class, people who are lower income, there will be an additional 50,000 unnecessary deaths every single year. But it's not just our healthcare system that would be devastated by this legislation. And this, again, is almost, you wonder the mentality, what world these guys are living in. All of us know that there are kids in Texas and in Vermont who go hungry. They don't get enough food, right? There are senior citizens who are dependent on Meals on Wheels program, congregate meal program, so they get at least one decent, nutritious meal a day. This legislation would cut $290 billion from nutrition. It is shameful, it is immoral, it is outrageous. And I don't have to tell anybody here that kids all over this country struggling, trying to figure out how they can afford to go to college or get the training they need to get a good job. This bill would slash education funding by $350 billion a year. Brothers and sisters, what we are dealing with is not only a massive attack on working families in order to benefit the very, very rich. And when I talk about the power of the rich, it's not only economic. I want you also to understand what a lot of people don't perceive. We have today a corrupt campaign finance system. All right? If you can believe it, I mean, it's almost hard to believe that this takes place in our country. Elon Musk himself spent $270 million to elect Donald Trump. And the reward that he got for electing Trump was to become the most powerful person in government, running all over, cutting the Social Security Administration, proposing to cut, if you can believe this, 83,000 jobs from the Veterans Administration. The American people know that when we have men and women who put their lives on the line to defend our country, you keep the promises we made to them. You don't cut back on the health care and the benefits that they receive. But what Trump is doing is not just waging an attack against the working class of this country. He is moving America very rapidly and dangerously into an authoritarian form of society. All right? We are supposed to have under our Constitution a separation of powers. You got an executive branch, you got a legislative branch, you have a judiciary. And this power-hungry man wants it all. He is usurping and taking away powers in the Congress. He is threatening the judiciary if a judge rules against him, threatening to impeach that judge. He is going after and suing media because some media has the courage to point out what he is doing. Now, this is a guy who every day is making vicious attacks against people he doesn't like. But when people attack him, he is very sensitive. His feelings get hurt. Okay? Very sensitive man. So he has sued ABC. He has sued Meta. He has sued the Des Moines Register because he didn't like a poll that they did. And right now he is waging a major lawsuit against 60 Minutes and CBS because he didn't like an interview they did with Kamala Harris. He is going after universities in America because he doesn't like the courses they teach. He is going after law firms because they represented clients he didn't like. And now, right now, in McAllen and other parts of this country, we're seeing what authoritarianism is about in its ugliest way. We're seeing people being stopped on the street, being picked up at their workplace, thrown into vans and taken God knows where without due process. Grabbing people, throwing them into a van is what takes place in dictatorships. Maybe it takes place in Russia or North Korea, but it's not supposed to happen in America, and we are going to fight back on that. A major point that I want to make is that the overwhelming majority of the American people do not support Trumpism. They do not believe that we should have a government run by billionaires. Some of you may recall a speech Abraham Lincoln gave on the Gettysburg battlefield in 1863. And you know what he said? He looked out on this battlefield where a terrible battle had taken place in the fight against slavery. And he looked out there and he said, what we owe these men, and thousands died on that day. Many were wounded and died later. He said, we owe them a vision which says that America will have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. That's what we believe. Now, this country has gone through difficult times in the past. Fight over slavery, the abolitionists in the 1840s, the 1850s, that struggle. We've gone through the terrible depression in the 1930s, where unemployment was like 25%. Got into World War II. We were totally unprepared to fight two wars, one in Europe and one in Asia. We have struggled for decades to fight for women's rights, to fight for civil rights, to end discrimination against the gay community, to create a nation in which all people could live together with justice. And we have had some good successes over the years. But where we have not succeeded is in the economic struggle. I want all of you never to forget not only that you are living in the wealthiest nation in the history of the world, but with so much new technology out there. The truth of the matter is that all people in America should have a decent standard of living. We live right now with a corrupt campaign finance system, and the implications of that system is that Congress, day after day, does things that the American people doesn't want it to do and doesn't do what we want it to do. And the reason for that is you have these billionaires out there. You got Musk saying to the Republicans, if you vote against my tax breaks for billionaires, we're going to primary you, we're going to throw you out of office. And on the Democratic Party, you got big fundraisers who say, if you stand up and vote for ending funding for Netanyahu's horrible war in Gaza, we are going to primary you. And right now, you're seeing cowardly members of Congress who are refusing to stand firm and say, no, we are not going to go to another war in Iran. We got 800,000 Americans sleeping out on the street. People can't afford food. They can't afford health care. We do not have to spend billions more fighting a war in Iran. But what that means is the most important political issue. It's not a sexy issue, but it is enormously important. We have got to end this disastrous Citizens United Supreme Court decision. It is not a democracy when billionaires buy elections. And instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires, which is what Trump wants, our demand is that when the rich have never had it so good, they're going to start paying their fair share of taxes. There are millions of workers in this country who are trying to make it on 12, 13, 14 bucks an hour. And I don't care where you live, you can't make it on those starvation wages. We're going to raise that minimum wage to at least 17 bucks an hour. And what workers increasingly understand is they're not going to be able to negotiate for decent wages, decent benefits, decent working conditions without a trade union. And that's why we've got to make it easier for workers to join unions. There are a number of Republicans who want to cut, if you can believe it, cut Social Security. Do you know what? This is, again, an unbelievable fact. Some 22% of seniors today in America are living on $15,000 a year or less. Can anybody explain to me how anybody in America, let alone a senior, can make it on $15,000 a year? Nobody can. Nobody can. So we're not going to cut Social Security. Our demand must be to expand Social Security benefits by lifting the cap on taxable income. And many years ago, well, not so many years ago, workers had what was called defined benefit pension plans. You know what that is? What that means is you go to, I know the younger people don't even know what this is about, but it means that workers in large corporations, part of, their wage benefits and everything else was a guarantee that when you retired, you left the company, you would get a pension. You knew exactly what it was. It was a defined benefit pension plan. And that is exactly what we have got to do right now. We've got to strengthen Social Security, but we have to make sure that every worker in America has the kind of pension that he or she deserves. The United States of America today is the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people. Do you know that? One country. Love you to visit us. I live in Burlington, Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. Somehow, in Canada and in countries all over the world, they have determined that health care is a human right, not a privilege. The function of today's broken and cruel healthcare system is not to provide quality care to all. It is to make huge profits for the insurance companies and the drug companies. And our job, and this is not a radical idea, it's not just Canada, it's all over Europe, it's in countries in Latin America. Our job is to make sure that we have a healthcare system that provides quality care to every man, woman, and child as a human right. Now, there's another issue coming down the pike which is going to be a huge issue, and that is the explosion of robotics and artificial intelligence. The reality is that most of the jobs that you guys have that exist in America are not going to be there in 10 or 15 years. They're going to be radically changed. And right now we're beginning to see the kinds of layoffs that I fear will happen. Now, technology and artificial intelligence and robotics are not bad unto themselves. If you're doing dangerous work or dirty work, and a machine comes in and can do that work for you, there's nothing wrong with that. The issue that we have got to resolve is who benefits from this new technology. If worker productivity goes up because of this technology, it must be workers who benefit, not just the owners of the corporations. And this is a huge issue that we're working on right now. Well, let me just wind down my remarks, and then I want to take some questions or comments and just say this. These are tough times for our country. And we are taking on what I call them oligarchs. These are people who have more wealth than you could imagine. I mean, they're not billionaires, they're multi-billionaires. They have tens of billions of dollars. And I think what we have to understand, we are facing in this country, as all of you know, serious problem in Vermont, I'm sure it's here as well, addiction, drug addiction problems, problem right here, overdoses and all that. You got people who are addicted to drugs, we have people addicted to alcohol, etc., etc. What these people are addicted to on top, and I mean this seriously, they are addicted to it. They are addicted to greed. They want more and more. Everybody wants to live comfortably. Everybody wants to make money. But for these people, there is no end in sight. They're prepared to destroy Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, in order to get even more wealth and more power. And the only way we stop them, what they got is incredible power, unlimited resources, they own the media, etc., etc. But we have one thing that they don't have. We have the people. But that doesn't mean anything if we are not organized. What Trumpism is about, by the way, and this is true of demagogues historically and all over the world right now. You know how they flourish? Do you think Trump and his friends are going to go around and say, vote for us so we can give massive tax breaks to billionaires and cut Medicaid? That ain't what they're talking about. All right, what they do is come up with quote-unquote enemies. Often people who have very little political power who are minorities. This goes on all over the world. It's always gone historically. 40, 50 years ago, there were candidates running for office who says, okay, white folks, those black people are going to take your jobs. Folks, those gay people are taking over your school system. Jews are doing this. Latinos are doing that. They always pick on a minority group. Our job is to break through that, to bring our people together. And when we stand together, we can win. But that is what demagoguery is. Instead of saying, well, you know what, maybe the problem with America is the fact that you have billionaires with uncontrollable greed who are prepared to destroy working people to become even richer. That's not what these guys are going to tell you. They're going to say, oh, the problem with America is all these undocumented people, and we got to get rid of them, blah, 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 blah. All right? And we've got to bring our people to understand, among other things, that during COVID, you know who was picking the food and processing the meat and are working in nursing homes? It was undocumented people. And the answer is not to have ICE agents picking people up off the streets. The answer is comprehensive immigration reform and a path towards citizenship. So these are tough times. They're tough times in so many ways. But I believe from the bottom of my heart that if we stand together, if we do not let Trump and his friends divide us up by the color of our skin or where we were born or our sexual orientation, if we stand together, we can not only defeat Trumpism, we can in fact create the kind of nation that the working families of this country deserve. All right, I want to ask you a question right now, and I'd like somebody to raise their hand, maybe come up here. Let's talk about immigration. Let's talk about what's going on in McAllen. Who wants to come on up here and say a few words on that, or raise their hands at least? Got a mic? All right. Who wants to talk about that? Danny? Okay, right here? All right, we got a mic for you. 1 second. Okay. Hold the mic in your hand.
Hold it, okay.
Right, tell me what's happening. Hold it. You can hold it. Let him hold it.
Can I hold?
You can hold
it. Is that okay? Well, Senator Sanders, first of all, thank you so much for coming down to the border. But to be real, we're in the state of crisis. I have personal friends, family members. There's a lot of us here, but there are thousands of our friends and family members that wouldn't even drive here because they're afraid to drive in the streets at night. I know people working, domestic workers, people that work in restaurants, they're not showing up to work. That have, kids in our public schools, they're not sure if they're gonna drive them to school this fall. So I don't know if I have a question, but I just wanted to really bring forward the urgency, yes, how scared people really are right now. We didn't really feel it into this administration. I know there's been a lot of talk about fear, but it's really never been this urgent like this time around. And I'm wondering what we could do with senators like you, like Greg Kazar. What can we do to protect our people right now? I know there's a lot of Know Your Rights movement going on, but what can we do with leaders that have the power that you do to start to better protect our people in this moment of crisis?
Well, I think, here's what I don't have the magic answer. This is what I think. First thought, the American people are increasingly disturbed by what they are seeing on their TV screens. All right, it's one thing to say, I am going to get rid of a drug dealer or a violent criminal who came to this country illegally. And people say, yeah, that's fine, get rid of that person. It's another thing to go after somebody who's been working on a job, paying taxes, working hard for 10 years, and say, we're going to throw that person out. And it's an interesting thing. Some of you may have noticed that recently. You have large employers in agriculture and in meat processing. They're saying to Trump, do you know what you're doing? You want to throw all of these people out? The price of food in America is going to double. That's what the employers are saying, because they know who is doing the work. So I think the answer, and again, I am in a minority on this, but the answer has got to be immediately to stop this business of people being arrested without due process, thrown into detention centers. That is not, I believe, what most Americans want. And the polling is now becoming clearer, by the way. Again, what they will use, the rhetoric they will use is, we're throwing out these violent criminals. And people say, good, do it. But when you go after people who have lived in this country for a long time, worked hard, pay taxes, live by the rules, that is not working so well for Trump. So we got to figure out a way to stop ICE from what they are doing as soon as possible. All right, other comments on this? People, I want to stay on this, because I know, as Danny mentioned, this is very much on people's minds. Am I correct? All right. Yes, I see a young man right here.
So I wanted to say thank you for coming.
Oh, excuse me. Just give it to him. He can hold it. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you for coming down, because many politicians, they can just get elected and stay over there in office. But I appreciate that you guys are from far away and nonetheless coming down. What my concern is that there's a lot of misinformation within the media. That the Republicans, some of them who might want to stand up against Trump, are afraid of it because he threatens them by saying that he's going to primary them.
Yes.
The law firms, as you mentioned, law firms that might be able to sue him are being silenced. And so it's becoming an autocracy where Trump has all power. And my fear is that what is it that we can do to stop that as the people of the country? And what is it that the government officials like yourself, that instead of it being three separate branches, it's becoming just himself controlling the other branches? What is it that maybe you guys can do to hold him accountable still?
Well, this is why I am here. And thank you very much. You know, I believe in democracy. I really do, in my heart of hearts. You disagree with me, that's fine. That's what America is supposed to be about. Make your point. You want to run against me? Run against me. But what you're going to have to move to Vermont to do that, but it's all right. But what is happening now, and this young man made the point, if you are a Republican member of Congress in Texas or anyplace else, and in your heart of hearts, you understand how devastating these cuts to Medicaid would be, right? And you think it's really dumb to give tax breaks to people who don't need it. And you got up and you stood that. The next day, Elon Musk or somebody else would say, you are finished politically, we're going to primary you. And that is where we are as a nation right now. Now, the reason I am here, and where we're going after we're here, we're going to Louisiana. I'm going to be right in the district of the Speaker of the House who helped write this bill. And believe it or not, that guy it's not like he represents, Speaker Johnson doesn't represent some wealthy community. He represents a low-income, working-class community. And the reason I'm going, why am I in Texas? Why am I going to Louisiana? Why am I going to Oklahoma? To tell people there to stand up and put pressure on their elected officials. So they're going to have to make a decision. Is it Just their campaign contributions? Or are they going to have to listen to people who understand what's going on and are going to throw them out of office if they do the wrong thing? So that's kind of what the reason you're asking me what I'm doing. That's why I'm here, is to mobilize people in Texas, Louisiana, Oklahoma. These are conservative states. But my strong guess, you go out in Texas, any place else, and you say to people, do you think it's a good idea to give tax breaks to billionaires and cut Medicaid? 80, 90% of the people will say no. But they don't know what's going on, and our job is to mobilize those people, and that's what we're doing right now. All right, other questions on let's stay on immigration for a moment if we can. Anyone else want to say a word? I see a woman straight in front of me. Yes, thank you. Let's get a mic. We'll get you a mic. Just let her have it.
Hello. Senator Sanders, thank you for coming to South Texas. My name is Gabby Zabaleta, and I would like to ask the Democratic Party to take the narrative of immigration and to stand for us. Because we are workers, we're good people, and if they do not take the narrative and start writing immigration reform, the Republicans are going to continue to call us names and berate us, and that's not fair. So please tell the Democratic Party to stand up and also take some of the risk along with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I mean, I am, as it happens, I am an independent, the longest serving independent in congressional history. But I caucus with the Democrats, and I'm part of the Democratic leadership. I will convey your feelings to the leadership. But I'll tell you, there is, let me just say a word on this one, and maybe Kendall, the new chair of the Democratic Party here, has spoken about it. It is no great secret that 40, 50 years ago, if you went out on the street in Texas or Vermont and you said to people, which political party represents the working class of America, no matter what their views are, so well, it's the Democratic Party. Who represents the wealthy and the powerful? Oh, it's the Republican Party. But the Democratic Party, many decades ago, had the brilliant idea that they would start accepting corporate money. And over the years, while they were strong on issues like women's rights and civil rights and gay rights and the environment, they in many ways turned their backs on working families. And all over this country, people are looking at the Democrats and they say, we don't believe a word you say anymore. You talk and you talk, but you don't deliver. And then they vote, maybe they'll throw the dice and say, I'm going to vote for a Trump. What I am trying to do is two things. We are trying to bring about fundamental reform of the Democratic Party. And right now, the Democratic Party, it is no great secret, is a top-down party controlled by billionaires and controlled by these consultants who live in another world. They don't know a clue what's going on. And our job is to force open. You know, the Democratic Party is not supposed to be a private club. And we got to break open that door and come marching in as working people, as young people, people of color, and say, you know what, this party belongs to us, not just billionaires. All right, look. I want to again thank everybody for coming out, and I appreciate Danny's point that we probably would have had twice as many people here tonight if people weren't afraid. And I hate the idea of people in this country being afraid to express their views in Congress, being afraid to walk the streets of McAllen. That is not what this country is about. But we have gone, let me just conclude by saying this. Again, these are tough times. These are the most difficult times in my lifetime, and I'm older than most of you. All right? So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. These are tough times. But despair is not an option. That is what they want us to do. All right, if we stand together, look, you know, the American people are decent people. They care about each other. The vast majority are not greedy people who want it all. Go around Texas. People think that health care is a human right. People think the minimum wage should be raised. People think we get billionaire money out of campaigns. That's what most people think. Our job is to stand together right now. It's to take over the Democratic Party. It's to take on the greed of the billionaire class. It's to create a country of compassion and, dare I say, of love. Rather than one of greed. And I hate you because you came from a different country or you're a different religion. That is not what this country is supposed to be about. We're going to turn it around. Thank you all very much.